Greetings and salutations. It is I, Quizzaciously. And this is Diablo 2 remastered, reforged, whatever they want to call it. Now, this game did not get very much in the way of applause or accolades when it came out. Everybody thought, oh, it's just a, reskinned version of Diablo 2. And it is a reskinned version of Diablo 2. But it's a fun reskin version of Diablo 2. And if you're a fan of Diablo 2 as I was when I was a youth, you play it again. But it got me thinking. This is something I always wanted to know. The talent system in Diablo 2 was such a way that if you put in a point, you could then go down to another point. Like with Amazons, you could go from critical strike down to dodge and then evade and then avoid. As you leveled, your character felt more powerful. But this is where it had me thinking. What if I could do it all by only using one talent per difficulty? This is what started my one talent challenge idea. Now, I've tried this in the past, one talent challenge. I did it on stream a little bit, but not completely. I got one character to 30 something. But I'm going to be starting this one hardcore on the ladder. So the new season came out. The new ladder season came out. I will have nothing. I will have no gear, no shared stash, no money, no assistance in any way. I will be doing it always solo. I will not have other players come in and help. I will have my games public but closed so that no one can join and so that I am alone completely. Now, I'm going to select the Druid, because I have not tried a one talent challenge Druid yet. I do have a one talent challenge Amazon, and I do have a one talent challenge Assassin already started. Now, I have never tried this on him, but I'm going to call him OTC Druid. And it's a hardcore character. If he dies, he's dead. Because it's ladder and nothing else is ladder, all those other characters cannot assist me in any way. I cannot take anybody off of them. Now, here's the rules for the one talent challenge. Shut up, Warreeve. Here's the rules for the one talent challenge. You get to your skill tree, and here's your talents, as anybody can see. You usually get T to bring it up. If I was to select a talent, say Firestorm, for all of normal, I would only be able to put a point into Firestorm. I can invest 20 points into Firestorm, but nothing else. I'm not allowed to put points into anything else. I'm stuck with just Firestorm as my ability. I'm not allowed to use the respec, and once I hit Nightmare, I'm allowed to pick a second talent to choose. Whether it be the connected one, the Molten Boulder, Arctic Blast, or something new, I'm allowed to pick a second talent. But that's it. And we'll see how far I can get with just those talents. So, I know what you're thinking. Well, that doesn't seem that hard. Okay. Let's say you put a point into Werewolf without Lycanthropy, or Lycanthropy, whatever, how you want to pronounce it. You don't get anywhere. Now, I could wait until level 6 and pick up Werebear instead. It has no connections, but I could use it at level 6. So I could go around just clubbing things until I get Werebear. But I'm only limited to one talent per difficulty. We're going to see exactly how far I can go with this. Now, if I die, I delete the character, I try again. Not necessarily with this character, but with a character. I'm going to delete the character and try again. I'm not going to put anything in the shared stash for these one talent challenges. Not at all. Items granted you, or skills granted you by an item, such as if you put on a helmet and it says +2 to Oak Sage, those are allowed. Those are granted to you by an item. That is okay. Gemming things is okay. Making rune words is okay. But going further than one talent is not. So let's get started. Now, I've played many, many years of Diablo 2. I like the way that they've updated this. I like the graphics. I like the shadows. I like everything about it. And I'm I've always really enjoyed Diablo in that regard. Now, I'm hoping that I can actually get someplace and do something profound with this druid. Will I get there?
So, this is
We
where
don't know.
evil hides.
We have no idea how it's going to turn out at all. Now, this might not be people's cup of tea, but I thought to myself, I want to do a challenge. The Bewillet Snipes, yeah, we know. I do those all the time. I've actually done those quite often. I play the game that way most often. Okay, really? Can't hit that guy? I know, it doesn't seem fair that I could use potions, right? Well, that's part of the game. You can use potions, but once you run out of potions, what happens? Well, you're kind of stuck. I know that I've done many of the Bewillet Snipes, and the Bewillet Snipes they do challenge me to a degree, but I'm used to that. I'm used to playing in a very oddball sense on Call of Duty. It's always been my thing to do an oddball Call of Duty, and I will try to keep, just as a point of mention here, I will try to keep these videos to about a half hour. I suppose I could go further. I suppose I could let the video go a little bit further, but if I do that, there could be some issues. If I go 45 minutes, you won't really have the viewer retention. And you have people that also like to do spoilers. And they like to put a spoiler in the video and say, oh, well, this is what happens. Okay, well, if you want to spoil the video for other viewers, then by all means, spoil the video for other viewers. But, come on now. Try to be kind and not spoil the video for others. Like I said, I've played Diablo 2. I've played Diablo as a series. Through Diablo 1 through Diablo 2. I played Diablo 3. I have Diablo 4, and I don't really care for Diablo 4. It doesn't feel like a Diablo. Diablo 3 didn't feel like a Diablo either. And I think I'm going to go with Raven. That's what I think I'm going to go with. As for stats, it's tough to say. That Raven could just hit people, that'd be great. I think just putting into energy is going to help allow me to summon more Ravens. But I'm surprised the Raven didn't actually do anything. The Ravens do kind of ramp up pretty well, though. I will say that. But like I was saying about the Diablo thing, I played Diablo 1, and I enjoyed Diablo 1 thoroughly. I thought it was one of the better games in the series, because it was basically a dungeon crawler, you know? And that's kind of how Diablo 2 felt when Diablo 2 first came out. Yeah, I mean, they restricted you to classes and, having skills. But I can understand that with the rampant number of people, using spells on warriors and stuff like that. It kind of defeated the purpose of having class identity in Diablo 1, because you'd sit there and you'd be like, well, I'm a warrior, but I have this Staff of Apocalypse. And I have enough intellect to wield said Staff of Apocalypse, so I'm a warrior running around casting spells. And it kind of took some of the identity out of the game. And so when they made classes in Diablo 2, it was a step in the right direction. When you had the... Diablo 3 is where I think they started going off the rails. Now, it is to be said that I did not play the Hellfire expansion for Diablo, for the original Diablo. And there's a reason for that. The Hellfire expansion for the original Diablo did not come out by Blizzard. It came out by Sierra. Now, when Sierra brought it out, this was at a time in life where you didn't really know about things. You didn't really get a whole lot of information, especially where I live. Information about games and everything did not really trickle down to out here. So we were not even aware of it until well after Diablo 2, and we thought, well, what's the point in going back, right? So, that being the case, I get to put another point into Raven. With that being the case about not knowing about the Hellfire expansion, we just decided we're going to stick with Diablo 2. Now, I've challenged other people to doing this about Diablo 2 because everybody likes to say Diablo 2 was this epic masterpiece of a game, and that Blizzard kind of got lost in the sauce with Diablo in Diablo 3. And I admit, Blizzard did get lost in the sauce with Diablo 3. However, the problem is that when Blizzard got all lost in the sauce with Diablo 3, people were comparing it to Diablo 2 only after Diablo 2 had Lord of Destruction and had all of its patches.
Is that
See?
all of them?
So, when you compare the two, there really isn't that much of a comparison because one was a well-polished game over years and the other one just came out. However, I did challenge people on the forums back in the day. These forum posts were eventually deleted, I guess because they made too much sense. I said, if everybody thinks that Diablo 2 is some sort of epic masterpiece out of the box, I challenge anybody to play regular Diablo 2. No expansions, no patches. 1.00 Diablo 2. It's easy to do. You just pop your disc in, never connect to Battle.net. You can play 1.00 Diablo 2, 1.00, boom, done. No one took me up on the offer. The talents didn't synergize. You didn't have any sort of, there was no benefits to anything. It was your talents were pretty weak and pretty useless. Yeah, there were some gimmicks like Blood Golem and Iron Maiden. But that was about it. That was the gimmick. You had Blood Golem and Iron Maiden. And anything beyond that was just kind of pathetic.
Hi there.
Knowing this, and knowing that nobody took me up on my challenge, I said to myself, what? I bet it's because they're scared. And they didn't want to come out of their little echo chamber of, this is a game, it's a game they had beloved, fond memories of, and they didn't want to come out of that echo chamber and say, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought. Or maybe it wasn't quite the epic masterpiece. And they never wanted to step outside of that and agree with that. Which, hey, more power to them, I guess. I don't think it's more power to them. I think that their opinion was a little flawed. But more power to them if they want to stand behind their opinion, however wrong it may be. And I know, people say, well, opinions can't be right or wrong. In this case, yes, they can. Because Diablo 2 had none of the synergies, had no rune words, had nothing. There was just no blend to it. It didn't feel cohesive as a game. You played as a necromancer, you summoned a whole bunch of skeletons and skeleton mages, but they were all flimsy and fell apart. And then when you summoned revives, they just steamrolled everything, and then you never went to using skeletons and skeletal mages. One talent did not offer benefits to another. It was just kind of, well, pathetic, to be honest with you. And Diablo 3 kind of had that same feel to it. It felt like Diablo 2. Except that when Diablo 3 came out, they just ruined it. We're going to take these diverse, deep talent trees, and we're just going to shorten them down to 5 basic abilities. I don't even think it was 5 basic abilities until Reaper of Souls. I think it was just 4 basic abilities that you could choose one of, and then you could choose a rune that makes it ever so slightly better. Kinda lame. Well, we move further into the whirlwind of suckage, and that is Diablo 4. Now, I was originally apprehensive for Diablo 4. I thought, I'm not going to get suckered into it. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit there and think it's this amazingly wonderful game. I'm gonna be apprehensive until I can play it. So I sat down to my brother had pre-ordered it, and I sat down and I played it, and I was like, it's not bad, not a bad game. I thought pretty, you know, pretty decent game, and I found myself wanting to play it more and more. So I pre-ordered it, and I played it, and I sat there thinking, they said before Diablo 4 was even launched, they said, we will not make Diablo 4 into Diablo 3. The Blizzard reps sat right there with a straight face and told everybody, nope, we're not making it into Diablo 3. Don't worry about it. We got your back. You can trust us. They were just like, hey, we were players. We know what it's like. We got your back, brother. They also said they wanted to have meaningful PvP. Fun and meaningful PvP. Those being the key words. Well, I'm sorry. Fun and rewarding PvP. Fun and rewarding PvP. Well, when the game came out, the first iteration of the game when it came out was decent. Held my interest. I played a rogue, got the rogue to like 60. The difficulty was there, and I enjoyed the difficulty for what it was. And I thought, not bad, not bad. Then I got out to the PvP zones. And when I got out to the PvP zones, I really started to enjoy the PvP. Sneaking around as a rogue, using little stealth techniques, trying to jump in out of the shadows, so to speak, and do damage to enemies, and be really, front-loaded on the damage so that they didn't survive. And it felt good to play. The game felt good to play. The PvP felt, fast, intuitive, reactive even, and then I noticed something. The closer my character got to level 70 in PvP, the more I realized that there's a bit of a flaw in the PvP. And the flaw wasn't with the PvP itself, it wasn't with the PvP being buggy or anything like that. It was instead with the PvP being very one-sided. Almost to a comical degree. And I take a step back and I'm looking at it and it's like, well, wait a minute, the sorcerer just absolutely eviscerates everybody in PvP because they could just slow you down and then walk away and blast you from a distance with spells. And it was not very balanced, considering every class pretty much had a melee component, save for, sorcerer and a druid if you went with like a spell druid. Most druids went Wolf NATO, which brings me to my next point, which was Wolf NATO druids just started to walk through the entire area. They didn't even use abilities. Once they got that little tornado starting around them, they just were like, they're just going to walk through this zone, kill everybody, turn in, materials so no one can touch us. And that's what it was in the PvP zones for the longest time. It was just lame. And then the game ceased to be about anything but, if you're not playing the meta Wolf NATO Druid, you're not playing the game. And it's kind of gone further and further down that rabbit hole, to the degree that Blizzard had stated that they were not going to do the parabolic damage that they did with Diablo 3. Because Diablo 3 was getting up into the trillions and quadrillions and quintillions of damage. It's a bit of an elaborate, an exaggeration, but it's not that far off from an exaggeration. Like, the damage was getting up into the billions and trillions in Diablo 3. And Blizzard was like, well, we want to curtail that um, sort of parabolic damage. We don't want characters being able to just run people over. They claim they learned from their mistakes in Diablo 3, because nobody did PvP in Diablo 3 because it was worthless. Problem is they've gone and recanted on both those things without publicly saying, we made a mistake, we just made the game a parabolic quick draw fest. Instead of owning up to it and admitting their error, Diablo Blizzard just looks at it and goes, well, we're going to make perennial expansions now. That's not going to make me want the game more, Blizzard. That's going to make me want the game less. And it's kind of funny because the number of users playing Diablo 3 or Diablo 4 has actually decreased precipitously since its launch. Because you had the rather questionable launch, and then you turn around and you had the rather pathetic showing of Season 1, and it's starting to look grim at this point. Now, if I was Blizzard, I would have, run to the drawing board and said, okay, where did we make the mistake? How can we stem the bleeding, so to speak? And they kind of did that with Season 2. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Paragon board idea. I love the idea of being able to really hyper specialize in your skills and have the Paragon boards and then kind of plonk them in where it needs to be. I like that idea. I like how you can switch the Paragon board, turn it 90 degrees or 180, etc., and put it where you want it so that it benefits you the most. I like that idea. But then the Paragon board concept got lost in the sauce again, and everybody was just headed for the big points in the Paragon board. Nobody cared about anything else. They're just like, oh, if you can get to that big point, that's the build. That's kind of lame. I mean, that takes something that's supposed to be deep and involved and just kind of makes it shallow and pathetic. I don't know about anybody else, but as a user, as a player of the game, I kind of want a depth to it. I kind of want this feel like I'm really invested in my character. Like, Diablo 2 gives you that feeling of being invested in your character. Diablo 1 gave you that feeling of being invested in your character because you really cared about the gear you put on him. You cared about, what you could get out of the shops. You cared about a lot of things in Diablo 1 and in Diablo 2. You cared about just the talent points you put in, where you invested your points. Like, that stuff mattered. And in Diablo 3 and 4, it mattered less and less and less, which was kind of disheartening, especially for Diablo 4. Like, compare it, if you will, to Path of Exile, or, for example, Last Epoch. Now, Last Epoch is a rather newer game. Ooh, rare armor. I mean, Last Epoch is a newer game, and yet Last Epoch is out there saying, hey, look, we've got this deep and involved talent system, and we're just hoping everybody likes it. It's wonderful. Like, the game itself is a little slow, and it's more of a storyline-based game. If you're into big story, then Last Epoch is for you. However, if you're not so heavy into this whole story, Last Epoch is kind of... How do I want to put this? It'll come off as kind of boring or droll. Very dry.
Not enough mana.
But at the same time, If storyline is your thing, Last Epoch is just absolutely amazing. And the way the character, not customization per se, but character talent customization and character breadth and depth is really something to behold. It's not as deep and as complicated as Path of Exile, but it's not as shallow as, say, Diablo 2, Diablo 3. And that makes it easy to pick up for everybody, makes it easy to play for everybody. And the forging system they actually got in Diablo 4, one of the newer forging systems, was directly ripped from Last Epoch. That was a feature in Last Epoch, and you could tell Blizzard sat down and played it and said, this is why we're losing people. I mean, legitimately, that's because it's almost a one-for-one rip from Last Epoch. And it's kind of a shame that they didn't have the ingenuity to sit down and really think things out and say, hey, you know, let's do it this way, and not make it so that it's basically a rip-off. That's all they had to do. It's just not rip off a game. Wow, 2 sashes of strength. They couldn't even stop themselves. They legitimately were like, well, nope, we're gonna rip this game straight off. And they just took what they could out of Last Epoch. Honestly sad, but you hate to see it. But that's Blizzard. They're running out of ideas. The creative minds that work there haven't put forth something directly ingenuitive or creative since. Jeez, I'd have to say Hearthstone was probably their most ambitious creative project in the past decade. Easily in the past decade. I mean, it spawned off of the Hearthstone. It spawned off of the World of Warcraft trading card game, which was basically just analog Hearthstone. Because that had battle cries and everything in it too.
Good to see you.
And it's like they just need to get back to their roots. They need to get back to really innovating and trying to build something unique. Wow, that's a terrible javelin. Absolutely horrible. Wonderful. I think if they were to do that, it would be much to their benefit. But do I expect it out of them? No. It's Blizzard we're talking about here. They're gonna keep rehashing and doing things that they've already done, and consumers are gonna keep purchasing them. I think it's wrong. I think consumers shouldn't sit there and just keep purchasing Blizzard products. I'm not gonna be purchasing the expansion, the Diablo 4 expansion. It's not worth it. Because the Spiritborn is just an amalgamation of Witch Doctor and Monk. They literally just was like, oh, here's a Witch Doctor, here's a Monk. Apparently the Monk, spent some time off in the woods with the Witch Doctor people, and they just came up with this weird, love child with a splash of Druid in there, because apparently the Druid mechanic of embracing some sort of shrine to gain beneficial powers, was a hit. Why wouldn't it be? Look at Wolf Nader Druid. Back to that again. But we're coming up here on the 30-minute mark, which means that I will be ending it there. No worries, I will be picking it up again. I really hope people like this. I do. I do hope that people enjoy the one talent challenge idea. I think it puts an interesting spin on the game. I want to make, I'm sitting here trying to make it harder and harder and harder on myself to do. Not because the game isn't hard. I mean, Diablo 2's difficult in its own right. But being able to say, hey, I did this with only one talent per difficulty, then, it kind of brings me some great joy. Let me see if this is the graveyard. It is the burial grounds.
Planting the dead. How odd.
And with that, I will leave it here. Until next time, I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, fantastic tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.